guys, it is April from Getting Hygge With It. I am here to do the first part of my October wrap-up. So far it's not been the best reading month that I've had. In terms of quantity that I'm reading and also quality, I've just not been loving it. I've got 3 books that I want to talk about with you here. I have a lot to say about them, so let's get into it. Now, I'm not sure how I should start. I have a DNF and I've got 2 books that I've read. Maybe we should start with my DNF. Let's get that out of the way. I picked up Dracul by Dacre Stoker and J.D. Barker. I was so excited about this book and I had to DNF it. I was not enjoying the writing. I just didn't think that it was very good writing, and the storyline itself was a bit boring, if I'm being honest. I have to say the premise of this is fantastic. This is a prequel to Dracula, and we follow Bram Stoker as he is writing Dracula. He's in basically a castle, and he's like bombarded in. He has locked the door. He's trying to write the story, and there are people outside trying to get in. There are these creepy wolves around. And I got quite a ways in. I think it was about 75 pages-ish, and I decided to DNF it at that point because I really wasn't liking the writing style. The word vile is used repeatedly, like too much in this book. And while there were some very creepy scenes, we are following a young Bram Stoker who has a nanny named Nanny Ellen. Is that her name? Nanny Ellen. Who acts very strangely. She also comes to the rescue of Bram throughout the book, or at least the part of the book that I read. And she, in and of herself, is very creepy, and those scenes were really vivid. However, the writing just really wasn't working for me, and so I was bored. And I was very surprised that I was not going to like this book, that I didn't like this book, because this had so many blurbs from so many authors like R.L. Stine, Riley Sager, John Saul, Josh Malerman. I mean, do I need to go on? So many people love this book, so just me not liking it, I mean, that is not a reason to not pick it up yourself, especially if you liked Dracula. I haven't even read Dracula yet, so I don't know if I like the vampire genre or not. Love Buffy the Vampire Slayer on TV, but yeah. I also, one last thing that I struggled with this book, and I struggle with many books, is when characters don't act like real people. There's a scene in here where Bram and his sister are convinced that Ellen is kind of weird. There's something going on with Ellen, and they're grown up and they go and visit their brother, who is married to a woman who is incredibly mentally ill. And he starts opening up to them about what's going on with his wife. And the first thing they ask is something that has nothing to do with his wife and her health or how he's doing. It's automatically like, what about that man who was in the stairway or whatever, who was found near her, blah, blah, blah. They don't act the way that brothers and sisters would, and there was a lot of that throughout it. I couldn't go on. It's a big book, and I knew that I needed to stop, and I will pass that along to someone that hopefully will like it more than I did. Okay. It doesn't get much better. So, the next book that I want to talk to you about is a 2-star read from me. I just finished it last night, and it's Ready Player One. This has amazing ratings on Goodreads. I think I checked it last night because I gave it 2 stars, and I think it had 4.25 stars, which for me, if I see a rating like that on Goodreads, like, I'm gonna read that book. That's a good sign. But you know, it's funny because I don't know what all the fuss is about with this book, and I know this is a very unpopular opinion, and I might get a little hate down in the comments, but that's okay. I really didn't think the world building was all that inventive here. This is about a boy, essentially. He's a young man. It's the year 2044, and everyone in the world isn't doing so hot. There's like a lot of starvation, there's a lot of people living in poverty, and people have logged into this thing called the Oasis, and it's like a video game, and it's created by this man who became a multi-billionaire because of this game and creating this game. And when he dies, he puts an Easter egg into the Oasis, and whoever can find the egg will win all of his fortunes. So what I really struggled with the world building is there's a lot of like 80s throwbacks, which is totally fine. Halliday, who created this whole virtual reality thing, loved the 80s. He grew up in the 80s. I think he's meant to be like my age or maybe a little bit younger than me, but obviously it's 2044, so he's a super old man. Because of that, there's a lot of 80s references. There's this whole string of characters who really love him and love the Oasis. It's kind of the way that they live their lives, and they're all called Gunters or Gunthers, I can't remember. And they all love him, and so they follow all of this 80s stuff. So for me, the world building wasn't all that inventive because it really is just looking at the 80s and throwing in tons of 80s references in here. If you played video games in the 80s, this might be the book for you. You might absolutely love this. I played a little bit of video games in the 80s, but I guess I thought the world building was going to be something else. I thought it was going to be more inventive. I expected a lot of 80s references in here, but I didn't expect all of the plot to hinge on 80s knowledge. And I didn't like that, and I didn't find that very inventive. That's why I didn't like it. I love the 80s. I mean, I'm a child of the 80s, but I didn't like that the whole plot was hinged on that. I will say that the audiobook was good. I think it was the only reason that I kept going. I really did like that. But what I struggled with the most with this, I think if I had read this and just felt like, oh, it was just okay, I would have given this 3 stars. But what I found time and time and time again in this book was so much sexism. And it's the worst kind of sexism, I think, because I think Ernest Cline was trying to be feminist. This felt like almost mansplaining. Almost. So here are some examples. First is our main character is a guy. There is a girl who is also a Gunther, so also someone who loves the 80s, loves Halliday and this world and the Oasis. And so he says essentially that she is hot because she likes that, because it's not normal in the year 2044 for a woman to be into the Oasis, that there aren't a lot of Gunthers that are female. I did not like that at all. Like, at all. For several reasons. Using the word hot referring to a woman is never a compliment. That is just sexism in and of itself, I find. I also found it very unbelievable that women in the age 2044 who have a chance to win billions of dollars if they immerse themselves in this world wouldn't do that. We care about money. Money is a very important part of feminism. It's not everything. It doesn't mean that we're equal to men. It's not absolutely everything, but it's a huge component. And I found that really ridiculous, that there wouldn't be a lot of female Gunthers, and that the ones that are in there are hot. I'm going to do one little spoiler. I'm going to do some like hand things so that you can like fast forward and stuff, because I really need to get this out of my system. So there is one scene in here that I also found like a warped idea of feminism. When I put up my hand, that means I'm going to be talking about that spoiler, so please fast forward if you haven't read this book and don't want to be spoiled. And then when I put down my hand, please continue to watch it. Okay, here's the spoiler. So H in this book is a man or a boy in the Oasis, and he is best friends with Z, our main character. And nearing the end of the book, you find out that H is actually a woman, and H's mother and her decide to go into the Oasis posing as a man, because you can do that. And this is what I have a problem with. The mom says this is the best thing for Black women, because H is a Black woman, is to go and pose as a male white avatar. And I have so many problems with that. The concept that a Black person needs to adapt how they look in order to be respected is very problematic to me. The idea that a woman needs to pose as a man in order to be respected is not good. There is nothing feminist or, there's nothing good about these things. The world needs to change. People don't need to change. Like, women don't need to change to be valuable. And I really took offense to that. I thought as it went on that it was going to get better in terms of its sexism, but it just proved over and over again that it was just this warped idea of feminism. And I really struggled with that so much. I didn't like that. Women in not so long ago, the 19th century, the 18th century, who wrote would have a male pen name a lot so that they would be published. That is not feminism. That was their only way of acquiring their dreams and maybe acquiring some money. That was not equality. That was them trying to survive. And going back to that in the year 2044 and applying the term feminism to it, it's just, no, not okay. Okay, so I'm done. I didn't like this book. I don't recommend this book if you're a feminist. So there was my little spoiler. Okay, so I think I went on and on about that enough. The last book is the best book that I've read so far in October, and that is A Mother's Reckoning by Sue Klebold. Now, I say that, but I only gave this 3.5. I originally gave it 3, but then I thought about it a bit more and I decided to bump it up. I never give 0.5 anything. It's always like 3-star, 4-star, 2-star, 5-star, But for this, I really did feel like I needed to give that a 0.5. So A Mother's Reckoning is about Sue Klebold. She is the mother of Dylan Klebold, who was one of the killers at Columbine. So this is her story. This is her opening up to America and the world about what happened to her son, what she thinks happened to her son, why he would do such a thing, and her kind of opening up about what she felt in that time. I thought this was a really honest account. I think she was very much blindsided by her son. I think there was a lot of scrutiny and criticism with Sue. People often asked her and demanded, why didn't you know? I would know if my son was about to shoot up a school. I would know. But that doesn't always happen that way. It's not always clear-cut things. Kids don't always act really out of character or problematic for things to have like major red flags. And I don't think that she felt like there were red flags. I think I found red flags as she was explaining things to me that she would say, you know, I didn't even think that would be a red flag now. Like, one example is Dylan, I think a month or two before the shooting, he wrote a short story for his English class about shooting up a school. And she, at the time, knew about it, but she thought it was, oh, did she know about it or didn't she? I can't remember, but she eventually said in this book, you know, I to this day, I don't know if that would have been an enormous red flag for me. To me, that would have been like, everything stops. My son has just written about something really, really violent. And I would be nervous about that. So I would have a lot of talks with my son about that if it was me. But everyone is different and everyone parents differently. And that doesn't mean that she thought, you know, oh yeah, he's going to go and do that and that's fine. One thing I really struggled with in this book is I felt like she blamed a lot on Eric. So it was Dylan and Eric who went into Columbine and shot so many people and eventually killed themselves. And I feel like there was a lot of blame put on Eric. She talked a lot about Dylan's depression and finding out that Dylan was suicidal. And she says that this was a suicide just as much as it was murder. And I did understand that. But I didn't think that she gave Eric enough credit for the same thing because they both killed themselves. And she refers to Eric a lot as like having major red flags all over the place and that he was violent all the time, whereas Dylan was more wanting a romantic relationship. And that was the kind of thing that he put in his diaries versus Eric, who put, you know, I want the world to die, basically, like very, very violent things. I wish that she would have held her son a little more accountable or given Eric some understanding as well, because Eric also committed suicide. So it felt like she was slightly pushing the blame onto Eric in a way that didn't hold her own son accountable. I think that was really important for her to do, but she didn't do it in here. And that might just be her trying to survive what her son did. So I can't really blame her for that, but she wrote a book about it, and Eric's parents, I imagine, read this book too. And if it was me and I had read this and I was Eric's parents, that would have been really hard. I also struggled when she was focusing on Dylan's bullying. She talks a lot in here about Dylan being bullied in school. And she doesn't say that's the reason that he did this, but she says that it lent to that, essentially. And what I struggled with, again, was her not taking responsibility or allowing her son to take responsibility for his own actions. And so Dylan also bullied people at school. One boy in particular that she mentioned briefly was someone that he bullied at school. When he was doing the shooting, he said all sorts of horrible things to people, lots of homophobic things, lots of anti-Semitic things, racist things. So I really struggle, like, obviously he was also shooting them, but there was something in her son that was also a bully. Yes, he was bullied, but he was also bullying. And none of that is good. But I struggled because there was a lot, to me, of passing the blame or trying to change people's view of her son because he was also a victim, kind of. There were moments in the shooting where Dylan told people to go, certain people to go, and she put it as that he spared them. And there was something about the way that she worded that really struck me as inappropriate, that he was saving them, when I don't know, it just felt wrong. And I don't know if I'm just being really, really picky, but I really struggled with it. But at the end of the day, this is a woman who lost her son forever, and knowing that the last moments of her son's life were so violent towards other people and also to himself. I would imagine that she should have everything sorted out in her mind. I can say all of this stuff because I'm an outsider looking in, and it would be unbelievable to be in her position. I think this is an important book to read. I think it's important that she was able to kind of defend herself with, you know, so many people saying you should have known. Like, oh my gosh. I don't know how you could ever imagine your son to be capable of something like this. But then again, I also find it very strange that people don't think that their children can be capable of cruelty. I've always found that interesting. I'm not a parent, so maybe if I'm able to have kids of my own, maybe I would also look at my child and go, oh no, you're never going to be capable of cruelty. But I know that I'm capable of cruelty. And if I am, surely everyone else is. And I just think that is lost somewhere. And maybe parents need to recognize their kids are capable of that kind of thing. Not maybe cruelty to this degree, but I don't know. It was a really hard book. I really felt for her. I really got frustrated with her at some points too. I had all sorts of feelings reading that book. Yeah, so definitely recommend that one for sure. I'm not going to keep it on my shelves because I think I'm done with it. I don't think I need to reread it, and I didn't love it enough to keep it on my shelves. But that's what I've read so far in October. So as you can see, it's not been the best, most amazing reading month thus far, but I am currently reading Dead Girls by Abigail Tardland. So good. I just started listening to on audiobook The Portrait of a Lady by Henry James. I don't know what made me pick it up, but I wanted to listen to that, and that's been really lovely so far. And then Autumn Readathon is going to be happening really soon. So lots and lots of wonderful books coming up, hopefully, fingers crossed. So yeah, let me know in the comments below what you're reading right now and whether you're liking it or not. Have you ever given anything a 0.5 star rating? Because I don't do that a lot, and I'd love to know your position on that. And how you keep track, because I base all of it on Goodreads. Like at the end of the year when I'm going through my list, I wouldn't know which is a 0.5 and which isn't unless I had like very rare instances of 0.5. Yeah, I hope you're doing well, and I will talk with you soon. Okay, bye guys.